Hi, Super Readers. My name is Captain Comprehension, and I am here to guide you as you become a comprehension detective. Welcome to episode 41 of our podcast. This month, we're reading Miss Nelson is Missing by Harry Allard Jr. Have you ever had your teacher tell you to behave when you were not listening? In today's story, we have a class of students who act up even when Miss Nelson tells them to stop. One day, their teacher goes missing and their substitute is mean. Uh-oh. Do you think the students ever find Miss Nelson and get away from Miss Swamp? Let's read to find out. Before we begin reading, let's go over some important vocabulary that will help us better understand the text. Our first word is rude. Rude is someone who has bad manners or actions. A synonym or word that means the same could be disrespectful or impolite, and an antonym or opposite could be kind, polite, or respectful. In Spanish, we say maleducado. Our second term is refused. Refused means someone chose not to do something or accept something. A synonym or word that means the same would be declined, rejected, or opposed. And an antonym or opposite would be accepted or took. In Spanish, rehusar. Then we have the word secret. A secret is something that is kept hidden. A synonym or word that means the same would be mystery, and an antonym or opposite might be announcement or revelation. In Spanish, we would say el secreto. Finally, we have the word misbehaving. Misbehaving means acting badly. A synonym or word that means the same would be disobeying or acting up, and an antonym or opposite might be obeying or being good. In Spanish, we'd say portarse mal. All right, super readers, it's time to pause your videos so you can answer a few vocabulary questions. We have something new this year. If you would scan the QR code or go to the website on your screen, it will take you to a Google form for you to answer the questions in. Which word means the same as the word refused? A. Accepted. B. Took. C. Obeyed. D. Opposed. The word rude means A. Having good manners. B. Being respectful. C. Impolite. Or D. Keeping a secret. It's time for us to read our story. Remember, you can always scan the Google form throughout if you missed it the first time. Miss Nelson is Missing by Harry Allard and James Marshall. The kids in room 207 were misbehaving again. Spitballs stuck to the ceiling. Paper planes whizzed through the air. They were the worst behaved class in the whole school. "Now settle down," said Miss Nelson in a sweet voice. But the students would not settle down. They whispered and giggled. They squirmed and made faces. They were even rude during story hour, and they always refused to do their lessons. "Something will have to be done," said Miss Nelson. The next morning, Miss Nelson did not come to school. "Wow!" yelled the kids. "Now we can really act up." They began to make more spitballs and paper planes. "Today, let's just be terrible," they said. "Not so fast," hissed an unpleasant voice. A woman in an ugly black dress stood before them. "I am your new teacher, Miss Viola Swamp." And she rapped the desk with her ruler. "Where is Miss Nelson?" asked the kids. "Never mind that," snapped Miss Swamp. "Open those arithmetic books." Miss Nelson's kids did as they were told. They could see that Miss Swamp was a real witch. She meant business. Right away, she put them to work, and she loaded them down with homework. "We'll have no story hour today," said Miss Swamp. "Keep your mouths shut," said Miss Swamp. "Sit perfectly still," said Miss Swamp. "And if you misbehave, you'll be sorry," said Miss Swamp. The kids in room 207 had never worked so hard. Days went by and there was no sign of Miss Nelson. The kids missed Miss Nelson. "We should try to find her," they said. They went to the police station. Detective McSmog was assigned to the case. He listened to their story. He scratched his head. He said. I think Miss Nelson is missing." Detective McSmog would not be much help. Other kids went to Miss Nelson's house. The shades were tightly drawn and no one answered the door. In fact, the only person they did see was the wicked Miss Viola Swamp coming up the street. "If she sees us, she'll give us more homework." They got away just in time. Maybe something terrible happened to Miss Nelson. "Maybe she was gobbled up by a shark," said one of the kids. But that didn't seem likely. "Maybe Miss Nelson went to Mars," said another kid. But that didn't seem likely either. The kids in room 207 became very discouraged. It seemed that Miss Nelson was never coming back, and they would be stuck with Miss Viola Swamp forever. They heard footsteps in the hall. "Here comes the witch," they whispered. "Hello, children," said someone in a sweet voice. It was Miss Nelson. "Did you miss me?" she asked. "We certainly did," cried all the kids. "Where were you?" "That's my little secret," said Miss Nelson. "How about a story hour?" "Oh, yes," cried the kids. Miss Nelson noticed that during story hour, no one was rude or silly. "What brought about this lovely change?" she asked. "That's our secret," said the kids. Back home, Miss Nelson took off her coat and hung it in the closet, right next to an ugly black dress. When it was time for bed, she sang a little song. "I'll never tell," she said to herself with a smile. P.S. Detective McSmog is working on a new case. He is now looking for Miss Viola Swamp. I hope you enjoyed that story, detectives. I know I sure did. So let's think. What is the text structure of Miss Nelson is missing? Here are some of the words that I heard that helped me determine the structure. Sorry. Misbehave. Loaded down. They missed her. Wicked. Discouraged. And a lovely change. So, was there a problem? Was anything compared? Did we read about something happening and it causing something else to happen? Use your text structure bookmarks to see if you can figure out the text structure of Miss Nelson is missing. When you're ready, pause your videos and answer your next question. What is the text structure of the passage? A. Comparison. B. Cause and effect. C. Problem and solution. D. Cause, problem, and solution. Welcome back, detectives. It's time for us to write our main idea. I identified the text structure as cause, problem, and solution. So we're going to use the sentence stems. The cause is, the problem is, the solution is. Pause your videos and write the main idea for Miss Nelson is missing. When you're ready, press play to see what I put. Hey detectives, here's my main idea. The cause is the kids in Miss Nelson's class won't stop misbehaving. The problem is Miss Nelson goes missing and their substitute is mean. The solution is Miss Nelson returns and the students finally stop misbehaving. How did yours compare to mine? I bet you it was pretty close. Now let's answer a multiple choice main idea question, kind of like that we'd see on our standardized tests. What is the best main idea of the selection? A. Miss Nelson's class behaves very badly until Miss Nelson goes missing and their new teacher is mean. When Miss Nelson returns, they act much kinder. B. Because Miss Viola Swamp is a very mean teacher, the students begin to misbehave even more, which results in Miss Nelson coming back. C. The students are very sad because they miss Miss Nelson and their new teacher is very mean and scary looking. Or D. Thankfully, Miss Nelson comes back to the class and the students are so happy to see her that they act very good and are kind to her and one another. Remember, you're looking for the answer choice that contains the cause, the problem, and the solution. Press pause on the video so you can answer this question. Great work, detectives! Now let's extend our main idea to write a summary of the passage. So first we think back to our main idea. I wrote the cause is the kids in Miss Nelson's class won't stop misbehaving. The problem is Miss Nelson goes missing and their substitute is mean. The solution is Miss Nelson returns and the students finally stop misbehaving. Pause your video and think about some details that you can add to the cause, details you can add to the problem, and details you can add to the solution that will help expand this and turn it into a summary. When you're ready, press play. Hey detectives, here's what I wrote for my summary. The details in red are the ones that I added into each part. The cause is the kids in Miss Nelson's class won't stop misbehaving. They are rude and refuse to work. The problem is Miss Nelson goes missing and their substitute is mean. The kids look everywhere for Miss Nelson, but they cannot find her. The solution is Miss Nelson returns and the students finally stop misbehaving. The students are glad she's back and are not silly or rude. Miss Nelson and her students have a secret about how their behavior changed. How does yours compare to mine? I bet your details were pretty similar to what I put, but it's okay if they weren't exact. Remember, what matters is that they support our main idea. Now let's use what we've done to answer a multiple choice summary question. What is the best summary of the selection? A. The students missed Miss Nelson's very much, but they did not know where she could possibly be. They began to wonder about the things that might have happened to her, like getting eaten by a shark, going to Mars, or having her car carried away by angry butterflies. There were some students who even went to see Detective McSmog, but all he said was that she was indeed missing. B. Neither the students nor Detective McSmog knew where Miss Nelson went after the students would not stop misbehaving. Miss Swamp was horrible and they missed Miss Nelson. When Miss Nelson returned, they were so happy and no one misbehaved anymore. C. The students in 207 were the worst behaved children in the school. They did all sorts of things while Miss Nelson tried to teach, like throwing spitballs, paper airplanes, or acting silly and rude during story hour. When they thought Miss Nelson was gone, they were excited to act up even worse. D. The students were excited to misbehave when Miss Nelson was gone until Miss Swamp appeared. She was a witch to the students and made them work harder than they ever had before. Students saw her walking up the street when they went to Miss Nelson's house, and they ran away so she would not give them more homework. Pause your videos and answer this question now. You're doing great work, detectives. It's time for us to infer. Remember, when we infer, we use the information we read and some information we already have in our brains in order to draw conclusions. Why do you think Miss Nelson at the very end of the book said, "I'll never tell," with a smile? How did the children of room 207 change from the beginning to the end of the story? Pause and discuss these questions with your adult partner. When you're ready, press play for the multiple choice version. Why do you think Miss Nelson at the very end of the book said, "I'll never tell," with a smile? A. Miss Nelson likes keeping secrets. B. Miss Nelson has a dress just like Miss Swamp's. C. Miss Nelson was really Miss Swamp all along. D. Miss Nelson promised not to tell the students' parents about their bad behavior. How did the children of room 207 change from the beginning to the end of the story? A. They were badly behaved in the beginning, but learned to act nicely when Miss Nelson returned. B. They acted bad in the beginning and were still the worst behaved class after Miss Nelson returned. C. They were very well behaved in the beginning, but began to act out because they missed Miss Nelson. D. They were well behaved, good children throughout the entire story and never had to change. Thank you so much for joining us this week, Comprehension Detectives. I hope you enjoyed reading Miss Nelson is Missing and that you learned a lesson about how you should act in your classroom this year. I look forward to joining you again next month. Remember, we can all be super readers. This is Captain Comprehension, signing off.